Hi everybody, this is Kevin from Gameology in Montclair, California, and I'm here to do a quick video on how to get some models painted so that you can get stuff out on the field quickly, easily, and just start playing the game. Today I'm going to be doing the Imperial Knight errant. So one of the first things you want to do is figure out what your paint scheme is. So what I'm doing here today is from the Imperial Knight's Codex, we're going to go with the Garantius scheme. So what I did was I started with the Rhinox Hide spray primer, and throughout the body here you're going to see a greenish turquoise color. And then as you see in the main portion where there's the metallic pieces, it's going to be a black metal with metal highlights. And then I'm going to be going through other areas on the trim here with a gold with a silver highlight there. Finally, the base is going to be an earth rock tone with some grass over it. So one of the most important things that you're going to need to do is lay out your paint area. First off, you want everything within arm's reach. You don't want to have to get up. Get everything and get it set out. Also, most importantly is lay out your paints right here. As you can see, I have them all laid out in order as I'm going to use them for the different areas. And I go from left to right, but you do whatever's comfortable for you. I also have my basing supplies, of course my model, and then some fresh paper towels and clean water, and my brushes are all here. I also additionally have the book or whatever I'm using as reference material for me to look at while I'm painting. As we get started, we're going to be talking about base coating. And now I've obviously already used a Rhinox Hide spray primer. Then I'm going to be going into the different base coat paints. I'm going to be using the Citadel large dry brush, as well as Citadel base paints and paints throughout the entire model process. The reason why I use Citadel is because the manufacturer, Games Workshop, has a product guarantee. So as I'm painting, I'm using the large dry brush, as I said, and I'm using long brush strokes. Now, one of the things people are going to get really concerned with are you going to do some oversplatter? Are you going to paint over some areas that are supposed to be other colors? Well, part of the way you overcome that and helps you speed up with your painting is you don't worry about it by doing a lot of layers. I'm doing 4 to 5 layers everywhere. So on my initial layer, it's actually going to be okay if I do paint over a little bit in some areas, because my next few layers are going to overcompensate for that. So as I'm continuing to go, there's some areas down here like I got. That's going to be gold later. That's okay. I'm going to use a finer detail brush later on to help clean that up. I'm just trying to very quickly get this base coat in. Also, a lot of people will come up to me and, gosh, I missed a little spot and it takes me forever to get paint into every little nook and cranny. Well, you're going to overcome that again by doing several layers, and you're also going to use what's called commonly in the painting as a wash. If you do use the Games Workshop or Citadel paints, they broke their washes into 2 different categories, which are shades and glazes. So as you're using your shade or your glaze, which obviously the glaze is going to be brighter, the shade is going to be darker, it'll be just fine for you to continue to just paint through there, and that'll kind of get all the areas that you've missed. Okay, so we finished our green base coat, and the next thing we're going to do is a glaze. We're going to apply a green glaze on top of it using the same large dry brush for the large brush strokes. Now normally what people would do is they would actually go to base coat other areas instead. The reason why I'm doing the glaze first is that way that can dry, because they take a while to dry, while I'm base coating and glazing other areas. Okay, so looking at here, we've got the different green areas over here that I've already gone through with the base coat. So as I get into here with the glaze, I'm going to fairly liberally apply it. You don't want to glob it on to where it's just drowning the model, but you do want it to have enough to where it has the freedom to soak into pores of the model and move around. And if you see that part of it is a little bit loose, that is because I don't have the shoulder pads attached, or actually the top half, so that I can take it off while still painting. So as you can see me doing here. Now the nice thing about washes is they are already watered down for you, so they do all the soaking and a lot of the detail work that you really want to get into your model already. So they're going to cover a lot of this, the problems that you miss, and especially deep recesses. When you get into smaller models, when you're doing faces and armor details that it's really hard to get into with the brush, they do a lot of work for you, as you can see on these toe points. on this model. And you can see I'm going through it pretty quickly. So I'm already almost done with all the green here, and it'll be able to dry fairly quick, but while it's drying, I'm going to do the other base coats as well. Okay, so we finished up our base coating and we finished up our washes. I've done the green, the black, and the gold primarily across the base of the model. So we've had it covered up and it's all dry and we're ready to get into layers. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the layering effect, and we're going to actually be able to go pretty fast because we're not putting a lot of paint, so we're not going to have a lot of dry time. So we'll be able to go one layer on the green, one layer on the black, one layer on the gold, then go right back to the green, back and forth. So that'll be really important. We're always painting. And I'm doing a technique that is similar to called a dry brush. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the brush, as you can kind of see, very lightly feather it across the model with a small amount of paint on the brush. So it's going to apply some color here, but it's not going to be across the entire portion of the model that I'm painting. So you're going to see some field definition in your paints. And after you do this with 3 or 4 different layers going from darker to lighter colors, it's actually going to start to look really, really good. So as I'm doing a dry brush, a lot of people, especially when I first started, I would start like 6, 7 inches away, and you see as I'm just kind of moving the brush, let me slow it down a little bit, but you're going to kind of move it quickly across here. That's okay. Start as far away as you're comfortable with. Because what's going to happen is once you start touching the model's going to do actually a lot of the work for you. You're not worried about covering every little inch here. You're not worried about covering every little bead of detail. You just want to get some definition here and some differences in layers of colors. So I'm actually going to have 3 or 4 different greens that are going to be visible when I do this. And again, I'm also not that worried about over painting some areas. I'm not going to be too upset if I get a little bit of green on the gold, because what I'm going to do is in my final layer, I'm actually going to fix that problem by using a much more detailed brush and taking some more time. The final layering process and edging is what's really going to take a majority of your time. So you're going to want to be able to do that a little bit more detailed and be a little bit more patient. You can even see there's a few areas in the model where I missed with my base coating. We're going to be able to compensate with that. So we can see a lot more detail as the lighter colors come in from this brush. So we can definitely start to see that light greenish turquoise coming out. And you have a trick that you can actually do that I'm not going to do in this video, but you can, is if you feel like it's too brush strokey in the paints, which this is kind of looking, I may do it off camera, you can actually apply a wash or a glaze again that will help cover up those brush stroke colors. And that actually looks pretty good. I'm probably going to do it depending on how the next color looks when I brush that on there. So as we're doing this, a lot of our layers, the majority of the time you'll see we'll do 7, 8 layers on professional painting, and then we'll add some design in there. But when we're doing just casual paint, if you want it to look good, 3 to 4 layers does tend to look pretty good, and it does outshine a majority of what other people are going to have on the field. And this is much faster, doing a little bit of cleanup after the fact, than it would be to go with a small brush across the entire model. That's just going to take forever, as big as this is. This is really probably 2 hours of paint work for me. Now again, if somebody were to pay me to paint this on the level of detail they would want, I would be doing far more layers of details, and I'll do a lot of edge work where I'll just take a lot of lighter paints and paint across all of these edges right in here, across the entire model. That does take up a significant amount of time. Okay, so now I'm adding my last dry brush of green. And when you dry brush, you're going to make sure you're wiping off a lot of the paint off the brush. So especially when it's your last coat, very little paint on your brush. So from here, what we're going to be doing is edging. It's also known as highlighting from a lot of professional painters. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take our pieces and we're going to have, using a finer detail brush, in this case I'm going to use the large brush and a medium dry brush down the road. For smaller models I'll get into a real fine detail brush, but since this is a larger one I don't need to. So what I'll be doing is just taking lighter color paints and literally just moving across the edges right here. And you may be able to see that I have a little bit of green oversplatter from my dry brush. This is the opportunity for you to clean it up. So you'll be able to save a lot of time as you go painting through, not having to worry about making these mistakes, because you're going to be able to clean it up down the road, as I said earlier. So we'll get started, and then you'll be able to see how I go through with the gold, and then I'm going to do some gray and metallic on top of the black here, and finally a little bit of green over in here where the green is on the edges. So depending on how much detail you want to get on here, depends on how fast you go. I'm going to be doing a couple of layers, so speed is important, but it's not critical. Now, generally speaking, the slower you go, the more paint you're going to put on there. When I do flame effects and other things, I'm doing 7, 8, 9 layers of paint, so I tend to go pretty quickly because those layers really do stack up. Here, when I'm doing 2, I want to go a little bit slower. You can see it's just very smooth brush strokes, very easy. I'm continuously refilling my brush with paint. Unfortunately, there's no real trick for going fast in this to get your time done, but hopefully you saved a lot of time earlier with your dry brushing. I had a friend of mine who was doing some painting, and I kept seeing him sitting there. I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just waiting for paint dry, waiting for paint to dry. And then he wasn't using my tip of basically always keep a brush moving on the model. So I'm over brushing a little bit, but it's no big deal because I am going to be airbrushing patterns on here later on. But if it ever comes up too much, you can just do this. Brush it off, get your finger a little bit wet while the paint's still a little wet, clean it off. Won't be perfect, but it'll work. The last piece we're going to cover in this video today is basing. And we're going to do just a small amount of it. We're not going to get into the huge crazy details in this video. We'll do that one in a future one. What I'm going to be doing today is gluing on a little bit of grass, some pebbles, and some rocks. And I'm going to be using the thin plastic glue from Citadel or Games Workshop. And we're just going to spread it on there so it adds some detail and some flavor. The good thing about this one is everything I'm doing you can use on most bases, smaller models, not just the large ones here. We will cover in future videos how to get crazy and really make the base look good. But for this one, we're just going to do some basic stuff so you can get your stuff on the field and play. So basically what we're doing, this is really the easiest part because there's no necessary patterns or order you have to do anything to. I personally prefer to do the larger stuff first. Other people will like to do the smaller things, but that's okay. So you just basically place some glue, slap your rocks on there, basically press it down, let it dry. And I've got this nice turntable here so I can move things around. So I'm just applying a couple of larger rocks, then I've got some pebbles to put in, and then I'm just going to add some grass. I'm going to leave a lot of space so that when we do a future video on just basing, I'm going to add a lot of really cool things. I think I'm going to break up some vehicles, maybe some other models look like it's just a wreckage on the battlefield here. So we've got lots of different stuff laying all over the place. You can really just do whatever you want here. This is just kind of, I hate to use the example of it being like your kid doing some finger painting in kindergarten, but you really just kind of get to slap stuff everywhere, however you want. Now, where do I get these? Some of the grass is the Citadel blade grass that I've got that you can get from Games Workshop. Other stuff are just things that I picked up out of my garden. If you're really mean, you steal them from your neighbor's garden. I did not endorse that. But you can really just kind of be creative. You can get all types of kits. If you like to go to Home Depot like I do, you can pick things up there. Anything else that you're about to throw out around your house, you can start chopping up. I remember a friend of mine telling me that his wife was getting ready to throw out a glass pan, so he just took it and shattered it and used the glass pieces for some basing. I don't know how safe that is, but he did it anyway. Now, as we get into the grass area, this is actually super easy because you're just going to sprinkle grass on there on top of the glue. Maybe shake it a little bit to see what sticks. If you have a large grass bag, you can actually dip the bases inside of the grass and then shake it off and see what stays there. But for today, I'm just going to apply glue, sprinkle grass, and then we're just going to do this all along the remainder of the model. And you can put some grass on top of the rocks too. Now, don't do too much glue at a time. You don't want it to start drying. Like, don't cover a huge area, much more than I have. It'll start drying and then that causes a problem. And another thing you can do is like underneath the foot there, to get a little bit into areas that you just can't sprinkle onto. Now, one thing we would like is your comments, especially if you're new to painting. I would like to hear what you have to say as far as, was this video helpful? Was there anything you didn't completely understand and you need me to go through a little bit more detail? We're going to be filming more and more videos of painting and other things such as this in the gaming business so that you can always follow us. To go over what we did today, we took the Imperial Knight with the Garantius paint scheme. We did base coating, highlighting, and some dry brush work, as well as some work on the base. What this was meant to do is get it looking good and out on the battlefield quickly. For future videos, I'll be going through how to do airbrush for highly detailed work, as well as some strong work on the base as well. If you'd like to order the paints that I used today or any other models from us, you can email us at gameologystaff@googlegroups.com. We'll do free shipping if you reference this video anywhere in the United States. As well as you can follow us on Facebook at Gameology and many of our subgroups, as well as subscribing to our YouTube channel. I look forward to reading your comments, and thank you very much for watching, and have a great time gaming.